the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our next speaker. Relationships, trust, intimacy. They are fundamental to successful coaching and powerful leadership. And yet, how often do we regard them as more of an art than a science? Our next speaker has over 25 years experience building relationships, but it wasn't until last year when she fell in love for the first time that she realized what it really took to create trust and intimacy on purpose. In the next 30 minutes, by sharing a little of her story, you'll learn how to do this for yourselves. Bringing some intimacy to the room, right here and now, please welcome to the stage, Sarah Winslow.
I was 15, tall, even then, still ginger, quite sporty, already quite ambitious, but very much not one of the cool kids. And the French exchange students were in town, and we were at a friend's house for a party. You know that moment in the party, especially when you were at school, when you'd finished with the proper dancing, and suddenly the slow music comes on, and everybody starts looking around. I knew who I wanted to dance with. His name was Andre. He was tall, dark, attractive, really handsome. My palms were starting to sweat, I was starting to breathe a little bit faster. I started walking across the room towards him. I was ready. This was my moment. I was going to get that dance with the guy that I really fancied. And I got halfway across, and I stopped. As a petite blonde called Laura fell into his arms, and they started dancing. They started dancing and cuddling, and I backed off to the side of the room, destined to watch once more from the sidelines. Fast forward a few years at university. This time his name was Tom. Tall, dark, handsome. Anybody seeing a pattern here? And he was a good friend of mine. We spent a lot of time together. But no matter how much I flirted, tried to find a way to go on a date with him, I watched him date a series of other women and dump a series of other women for 3 years. Nothing happened. So near, and yet so far. And that's pretty much the pattern that continued. It was a familiar one, watching in from the outside when everybody else seemed to be falling in love, and I just kept thinking, when's it going to happen for me? And it's how I found myself last spring, age 38, still single, not married, no children, actually not in a romantic relationship of any sort. Now I was very clear that I wanted a romantic relationship. I would talk about it a lot. But by then I was actually fairly convinced it wasn't going to happen. Hey, 20 years worth of evidence, right from that moment of Andre dancing with Laura, right up to the present day, that this was not going to happen for me. Because I was not the kind of person that people fell in love with, right? Now, at the same time, I happened to be leading a coach training program in San Diego. And the leader in that program, Kat Wood, right about this time, it was about April last year, we were about halfway through the program, she pretty much run out of patience with my excuses. Because I kept talking about how much I wanted to fall in love and be in a relationship. And I was doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. There we go. Is that better? And so we were stood there one morning leading this training, and she said to me, I notice you say you want this, but you're not actually willing to do anything about it. Quite a lot of silence over there with me. She was right. She was entirely right. So she looked at me in the way that we do as coaches and said, what's one thing you could do today to move this forwards? And then it was asked that question to our clients. More silence. Kind of trapped now, nowhere to escape to. And I said, well, I could rewrite my dating profile, make it a bit more me. Great. Big smile on her face. Looking forward to seeing it. So we did the day, busy, delivering training, very full. And now the whole big set of excuses as to why I haven't done this. And come 7 p.m, like my mind was like, she must have forgotten. It's okay, I can get away with it. Until she came over to me, how's it going? Not so good, I'll do it tonight. How about we do it now? That was really the point of no escape. And it's how I found myself that evening, thankfully with a large glass of wine in the bar, but 3 or 4 of my closest coaching friends and colleagues rewriting my dosing profile. And rather than me tell you about it, I want to just actually read a little bit of it. Can't tell you how uncomfortable this is right now. What I want you to know about me is that I am full of love and passion, brilliant, witty and sarcastic, and full of grace. I'm a badass with a huge heart, looking for a deep connection with a special someone. I'm a person you'll learn something new about every time we speak. The tall, confident redhead who both craves and is afraid of vulnerability. I want deep connection and love in a relationship where I'm seen and known and loved. When we meet, at first I'll see your brilliance, playfulness and wit. You'll win me over with the desire to create joy in our love, and then I'll see your open heart. I'd never written anything like that, let alone put it out in the world. But what made the difference? What made me actually write that in the moment? Because it was not predictable from 20 years worth of evidence. Well, some might say accountability, someone who didn't let me read it out one more time. But actually what made the difference was being able to see myself in that moment as lovable. I could trust that if I put that out into the world, it would be okay, that someone would love me exactly as I am. And that's actually the first theme that I want to turn to. Who here comes up against this with our clients, like issues of self-love or self-worth or self-confidence? Yeah, pretty much every hand in the room. Who here also has some of that for themselves? Is a little bit afraid there's something about themselves that isn't lovable, or at the very least, they don't quite like showing to people, right? Again, almost every hand. Well, here's the thing. Consider that wherever we're at, there is always room to grow our love and our relationship with ourselves. But why is that important? Intuitively, I kind of know it is, but why? Well, loving ourselves is actually fundamental to being in relationship, because it's what allows ourselves to be fully seen, allows ourselves to be authentic, allows ourselves to be out there in the world exactly as we are, and make connection. And what do we mean by being seen? Again, it's one of those phrases we kind of bandy around. Well, my assertion is that most of us, probably actually all of us, let's be honest, at times in our lives we wear masks. Sometimes it's in a role, so I might wear a mask as a sister, or as a daughter, or as a coach, a leader, a partner. I also wear masks, or we all wear masks in social situations too. We might wear the mask of someone who's funny. Anyone else use that as a distraction tactic? Yeah. We might wear the mask of someone who's tough, someone who doesn't care. Yes, Christopher, I was looking for you. But we wear these because we're afraid that if people see us as we really are, they actually won't quite like what they see. Again, that's what gets in the way. That performance, if you like, gets in the way of relationship. In some ways, it's actually quite funny when you look at it, because if we were really maintaining that level of performance and actually hiding part of ourselves, that would be Oscar-worthy. To do that all the time. For actually nobody to see our real selves and just put on this persona that we want everybody to see. And yet we try and do it. And it's kind of exhausting. And the thing is, as coaches and as leaders, that performance, that level of performance, has us being authentic. People can kind of tell it's not quite us. There's something in the way. And it really gets in the way of trust and intimacy. And deep down, I think we all know how important that is in relationships, professional, personal, coaching, not just because it's called competency number 3. And from that place, actually being able to break through the performance and see ourselves as lovable is really a key to powerful relationship. Now, when I look back at that dating profile, that was actually the breakthrough, that I loved myself enough, trusted that other people would love me, to put it out there in the world. And it started seeping through into other parts of my life. I started noticing it in my coaching. When I could just show up as me, the focus shifted from over here with me to over there with my client. I wasn't worrying about the performance and what they thought. It was right over there with them. And that started really making a difference. So my assertion is that trust and intimacy starts with allowing ourselves to be seen, and it's built and it grows from knowing that we're lovable. Not because there's evidence for it, but because we choose to know it for ourselves. Now, that dating profile led to some quite exciting developments in my love life. You might be interested to know. I met Terry. You want to guess? Tall, athletic, not actually dark-haired, he was also ginger, but anyway, nearly, almost a full house. He was warm, he was funny, he was engaging, he would tease me endlessly, but he was also willing to be in some quite deep emotional conversations. It was a relationship quite unlike any I had ever been in before. And when we talk about relationships, it's quite easy to make them sound easy. You know, it's the Hollywood version. You meet someone, you fall in love, it's all great, you have amazing sex, you get married, totally easy, no challenges. Yeah, right. Relationships, they're uncomfortable, they're messy. Stuff goes wrong, stuff happens, we deal with stuff all the time. And that's actually part of the second theme that I want to pull out a little bit. Being willing to be uncomfortable. I don't mean the little level of discomfort when we say something silly or people start looking at us in the room. It might just be my Britishness coming out of a general desire to be in the background. I mean there are really deep levels of discomfort when we are risking saying things, when we are putting ourselves out there, when we have no idea how things are going to go. When all the fear comes up and that inner voice is telling us it's all terrifying. That's the discomfort I'm talking about, that we actually need to learn to love, or at the very least need to learn to be with. So, when I look back on the relationship and those moments of discomfort, it's the moment when we had a date which lasted for a weekend, and we had that really awkward conversation in the car on the way back going, does that mean we're in a relationship? What if he'd said no? What if he was in a totally different place? That's scary, that's uncomfortable. The fear and the discomfort was there the first moment he told me he loved me, and I was in no way ready to say it back to him. Would he leave at that point? Again, see a theme of where my fear goes. But that, again, really deep levels of discomfort. It was also the discomfort when 10 months or so into the relationship, I realized that he wasn't actually the one I was going to be spending the rest of my life with. And I had to have that conversation. Again, scary, uncomfortable. I don't say that to end on a sad note, though, because with my current partner, the discomfort was having the conversation with him on our fourth date of whether he wanted kids. Hashtag things you have to ask when you don't meet through online dating. Modern problems. And it's the same in coaching, right? This is not just a conversation about personal relationships. The fear when we ask someone to hire us. My guess is every single one of you in that moment you ask the question and you don't quite know what the answer is going to be. There's a level of discomfort. It might be the discomfort when we ask a client how the relationship's going, how the coaching's working for them. We have no idea what that's saying. It's also the discomfort when we ask a client the question. The one we know will make a difference, but might be the one that makes them angry or upset. Might also be the one that has them fire us. That's uncomfortable too. But it's the key to intimacy. Because intimacy, for me, is saying the thing and being with the consequences. Think about that for a moment. Saying the thing, being with the consequences, whatever they are. Again, pretty deeply uncomfortable. Now, again, as I was growing my ability to be with discomfort, I was seeing the results of my coaching. A willingness to say things, a willingness to ask questions, a willingness to challenge clients in a totally different way, trust and intimacy on a very different level. For the last part of this session, I kind of actually want to move into a few things I distilled out from what I learned. Because it's all very well me standing here on stage and going, I had a big breakthrough in trust and intimacy when I fell in love. Yeah, sorry. You're going to have to learn that for yourself. But there's a few things that I realized as I was thinking back through this. The first, stop waiting. It's never going to be comfortable. I think as coaches we all know this, but sometimes we need the reminder. There's never going to be a moment where asking that question or saying that thing feels good. So, say it, blurt, speak. It really generally is not as bad as you fear it might be. Learning to love messy. A colleague of mine, Alice Petzold, has coined the term where intimacy is actually inti-messy, which is kind of a beautiful reminder of this. And this comes from a place where I fundamentally believe that there is no mess that we can create in a conversation with someone that we can't also clear up in a conversation with someone when we're in a relationship with them. We just have to be willing to do it. So when we avoid the messy stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, what we're really avoiding is intimacy. And this isn't any relationship. Again, professional, personal, coaching, wherever. So if we can really learn to love the messiness, embrace it, be with it, be all the way in it, that's the access to intimacy. Again, it's very rarely as bad as you fear it will be. That inner voice has different opinions and realize that we don't have to listen to it. Now this is an interesting one, because it's seeing intimacy as a choice. Again, as coaches, most of us kind of trained to relate to everything as a choice on one level. But we can be either empowered by the idea it's a choice, or we can be kind of victimized by it. We can resent the fact that I could choose intimacy, but I'd really rather not. Or we can look at it as something which opens things up, as something that creates a depth in relationships that's something new, a place to play, a place to practice, a place to say the thing that's going to make a difference. So it's a place to look at your relationship to the choice around this and keep choosing it. Speak and be known. Because relationship happens in conversation. So, in those moments when we have no idea what to say, when we're frightened, when we're all in our stuff, when we're resisting intimacy, sometimes the most powerful thing to do is to say that out loud. So, where we can actually just speak where we're at. That, again, creates connection, creates intimacy. It's also this thing that this is perfect from where my head comes from. We can't do intimacy by ourselves. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room who likes to do everything by themselves, or maybe it's me. Right, we can't do it by ourselves, and we also can't do it to other people. We have to do it with other people. Again, in conversation. This final one draws a little on a lovely quote from Jensen Sincero about loving yourself fiercely, loyally, unapologetically. Because as I was talking about in that first theme, when we can love ourselves enough to be fully seen and to trust and to be in those deep relationships, it really makes a difference everywhere. And I'm leaving with one final thought, which kind of does a bit of summing up. Now, where this came from, I might have told a few of you this. When I first wrote the title of this talk back in January, How I Became a Better Coach After Falling in Love, I 100% genuinely thought it was about how me falling in love with Terry made me a better coach. At some point, after a lot of thought and mulling around it, I realised that it wasn't about that at all. It was actually about how me falling in love with me had made me a better coach. And some might say it took you a long time to get to that. But where it really, and I'm not saying that's always easy. Loving yourself is not always something that comes naturally. There are definitely days when I don't feel that love for myself. But it's so important. Because your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. So if there's one thing that I would love to challenge you, invite you, gently encourage you to take on, is to really look at what you can do to grow that love with yourself. Because the impact will be profound. Thank you very much. Now, I think we have a few minutes left, so I'd love to get some of your thoughts, your feedback. If you want to share your own icky experiences around trust and intimacy in relationships, I'd love to hear some of them. We do have a roving mic, so, or any questions, in fact.
I have a comment.
Sure.
I love your profile.
Thank you.
Will he write mine?
Well, I can give you a strong recommendation that if you sit down in a bar an evening when you're tired with a large glass of wine or whatever your preferred beverage might be, alcoholic or otherwise, there is really something powerful in doing it with other people. Because it's that thing we get in our own heads. We almost can't take the mask off because we're too afraid to. And actually an hour of hearing how other people see me is actually a really powerful way to do it. So, willing to be part of that team. And it's great if it's also people who know you. So, thank you, I appreciate that.
So I'm curious, do you have any clients that sort of knew you before you fell in love and know you now, and do they talk about the difference in your coaching?
Well, it's fascinating because I'd actually put it in a slightly different way. Because before all of this, I very, very rarely coached any clients about their relationships. It's like I wasn't willing to go there. Because I had so much of my own stuff that I don't know how to do this. Who on earth am I to coach you about romantic relationships? I'm totally clueless. I would say within the 2 months of meeting Terry and starting to be in a relationship with him, virtually every client I was working with, I was having a conversation. I was having with one who was coming out as bisexual. I was with one who'd resisted relationships for almost as long as I had, and was suddenly actually willing to be in action and take on something different. I had one who I'd been coaching around executive and leadership issues at work for a long time, and she finally fessed up as to what state the marriage was in and how that was actually going away. So it was a fascinating, I wasn't anything sort of conscious, but it just opened a space where I could be in some different conversations, and also in more conversations around a relationship in a professional capacity as well. So I think it was on a very kind of subconscious level, but I really noticed it. It was that sort of when the universe puts things in front of you, like it's everybody. Everyone's doing it, so yeah. Anybody else? So I'm now with John, but doing very well with John actually. So yes. Well, and it's interesting that because that was also part of the breakthrough. There was a story I didn't tell. There was a story I didn't tell about a conversation at the end of last year with another coaching colleague who, on a phone call, I first got to say, "Hi, Sarah, how are you doing? How's Terry?" third question on the call when I hadn't spoken to her for 2 months was, is he the one? Again, whole story about that and how that actually got me into thinking, was I in this because he was really the long-term one, or actually did I have the confidence to say, you know what, he's not, but actually I can create a relationship? And that's actually what allowed me to end that and then create the one that I'm now in. So, yeah.
So the idea of like falling in love with yourself and knowing yourself, when you see that arise in a client and it's maybe keenly aware to you that that's a journey that would be beneficial for them, how do you facilitate that or help guide them?
It's a great question. I definitely wouldn't say this is the answer. I've probably done it in a million different ways. I guess with a lot of it, it's starting with the awareness of it. Sometimes distilling out. I'm sure some of you are the same. My inner voice is a complete bitch. She's so mean, so mean. But when I can get presence of that voice and sort of be a little separate from it, so again, for clients to almost have them speak that, realize quite how hard they're being on themselves and challenge it. Because the more we give daylight to it and actually say it out loud, almost the more we can hear that it's a little ridiculous. So I start with the awareness. The other side is, again, like we would in many areas of coaching, to start with some practice, but just very, very simple practice. So sometimes that thing of what's one thing you could do for yourself today that would be you know, giving yourself a little bit of love, just a little bit. And sometimes even that one action is a stretch at the start, but it just starts to introduce this idea that they can, and just, it's a place to build from. And yeah, you're totally right, it's a process and a journey that can take some time if we have a lot of years of practice of doing it the other way. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed it, and I will give you the magic. Oh, please do come and engage. I do blog about this kind of stuff and do all sorts of things, so please come and join in the conversation. And the magic code that you've all been waiting for. Thank you very much.
Yeah.